What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 podcast, the official podcast of the All 22 Fantasy Football platform, the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. Ray, it was a pretty big weekend with free agency, some big announcements. We've been waiting a long time to hear what's going on with Justin Fields. We finally heard it. What do you think?
Yeah, the market spoke, and it told us what the NFL thinks of Justin Fields. I think both of us have been pretty low relatively on Justin Fields as a QB prospect sort of overall moving forward. But even in our projections, we were saying, okay, yeah, maybe a third round pick or something for Justin Fields. I think I even a few weeks back said maybe Oakland in round 2, right? Clearly we see his value is even less than that. But I think overall, it's just a lot of the narrative has been around how bad the situation has been in Chicago, and it has been bad for much of the early parts of his career. But especially this past season, there was enough there for him to show more than he did, and he just didn't show it for the most part, right? I think at the end of the day, two key metrics really stuck out to me when you talk about Justin Fields, which he had the highest time to throw in the league, 3.39 seconds, which is most by a lot. The gap between that and second place, which is 3.17, was like equal to the gap between second and eighth in the league. So he was holding onto the ball a ton. We talked about he just doesn't see the field very well, right? Which contributes to holding onto the ball so long. And yet he was 16th in adjusted completion percentage, which is worse than like Sam Howell. So you're holding on to the ball. You have receivers over 3.4 seconds getting open, especially if one of them is DJ Moore, for crying out loud, right? And you're still just not seeing the field and making the plays that are there. You can't rely on just scrambling on broken plays over and over and over again. I think the league has seen what a lot of the criticisms towards Justin Fields have been and have basically proven that to be the case and said, we don't see him as a viable starter right now. And he's got a big contract coming up. So that's going to be, that his price tag is not very high. It's a 6th that could potentially turn into a 4th, which is overall it's day 3. So that's just kind of my immediate reaction to it. I'm also going to put our standard background here. We'll share the film of the draft prospects that we break down just in a few minutes. So, but yeah, that's my takeaway. Not sure if you have anything different, but that's what spoke to me.
I think I was a little bit higher on Justin Fields than you seem to be. And it's not that I love Justin Fields. I didn't. I was critical because I thought he was super raw. No, not at all. He was super raw. But there were aspects to his game where I said if he goes to the right team, right situation, he could be great. And it's just like I said it as a joke on one podcast recently where it's like if you go to the Jets or the Bears, chances are your career's ruined the day they draft you, right? And people are talking about how getting Keenan Allen makes the Bears situation so much better. And I'm not there, right? Like I think it's better for sure for Caleb Williams. And I think Caleb Williams is a much better prospect than Justin Fields. But I don't think it's a good situation still. Justin Fields was playing in that horrible situation his entire start of his career, right? So to me, it wasn't a place for him to go and learn. It wasn't a place for him to develop skills. It was a place for him to go and try to survive. And he didn't. Like we're here now, he didn't. He goes for a 6th round pick, like you said, but he goes to the Steelers. And I like that, right? Like I like learning behind Russell Wilson because all the criticisms that we give about Russell Wilson, he is a pro, right? Like he is a guy that 3 or 4 years ago, we were saying potential Hall of Famer, right? Has won a Super Bowl, has been to 2, has been an all-pro. People like Russell Wilson, liked Russell Wilson. I think he's a good guy to learn behind. We talked about how that situation is great because Mike Tomlin's there. Mike Tomlin is a top 3-4 coach in the NFL, right? Like, and that situation is getting better. You have George Pickens. Yes, they traded away Johnson, but they're so good at getting receivers and making them work. The running game is good. The offensive line is getting better. And he sits and he learns. I like it. Like it's good. It's one of those situations where, like so many other quarterbacks we've seen recently, these young guys that their team just give up on them after a few years. You go to the next place, you sit for a year, you sit for maybe 2 years, and then somebody gives you a shot. Even if it's a transition to, a younger rookie, you'll have 3-4 games. Sam Darnold's doing it right now for the Vikings, right? Like there is opportunity out there for guys like this to get another shot. Justin Fields will get his other shot, whether it's in Pittsburgh or somewhere else, but at least this gives him the chance to develop, which I like. So I don't think it's the end of the world. And, there were rumors that the Bears turned down other offers to put Justin in the situation that he preferred. I don't know if that's true or not, but you don't know if potentially they were going to get a 4th or a 5th round pick, or I doubt they turned down a 3rd just to give Justin Fields what he wanted.
No, you don't do the right thing for 2 rounds worth of draft picks. You do that for like 15 spots, and then you say, "Look at how great we are by doing right by the player." It's like, yeah, okay. If someone was giving you a guaranteed 4th, you would have taken it. So
I don't know. I don't know about a 4th. Yeah. 2nd, 3rd, I agree with you, but 4th, 5th. It's all. I'll take it's all 4th. Great.
I'll send you to the woolly mammoths in Alaska for a 4th.
QB's playing in the cold. I love it. The other big move was Tyron Smith signing with the Jets. He had posted on, I think it was Twitter, basically saying that he wanted Dallas to just re-sign him. He wanted to stay with the Cowboys. Something obviously broke down there. I'm curious what your take is on that. But he goes to the Jets, and I like that situation for obvious reasons, right? It's a winning culture with Aaron Rodgers. The expectation, I'll say, is at least to win. And it's a huge need for them. It's a huge need for them that he fills. And yeah, I mean, it makes that team a lot better. So for the team, for him, I like it all around. It also gives the Jets a lot more flexibility in the draft if they don't want to go tackle, if if Fashanu's gone and Alt is gone and they don't feel great about Latham or Fatanu or the other guys, right? It's like you can then go, Roma Dunze is here. I could take him, or Brock Bowers, or whatever you want to do, even if you want to go edge rusher, which they have plenty of. But it gives them so much more flexibility. I think if it was me, I would still definitely go tackle because Tyron Smith's playing like 8 games this year, right? It's just kind of par for the course at this point. So I would still go tackle, but I think it gives him the flexibility. So tell me what happened.
Yeah, well, that Tyron Smith tweet was not real, by the way. That was just a guy. Tyron Smith does not
stop.
Tweet.
Really?
He doesn't speak more than like 4 words in a week. So that was not actually Tyron Smith. But
I'm gonna just jump out the window. Sorry,
Tyron Smith did. I mean, the preference, of course, was to go back to Dallas, where he's played his whole career up to this point. I think he would have liked for things to work out. Cowboys are cap strapped. And really just couldn't get it done. They got priced out of guys like Zach Moss. So they were definitely priced out of Tyron Smith. The thing with Tyron Smith is I think the Cowboys this past year kind of found the formula for success at this stage of Tyron Smith's career, which is you don't practice. Like you're just not practicing this week. We're just going to, prepare your body, maintain your body so that you're ready to go on Sundays. And that's it. And it worked for the most part. I played 13, 14 games, which that's the majority of the season. When you get 14 games of elite tackle play, you're going to take it every day. Now, at the same token, this should not change what the Jets do. They cannot pass on someone like a Fashanu at 9 or what was it, 9 or 10 they pick. If he's there and they're on the clock, you just cannot do it because of Smith's injury history. You also have to wonder, new system, new environment. Does he need to practice a bit more as opposed to in Dallas? He's been there for the last 10 plus years. He knows the lay of the land. There's nothing that he really can learn Monday through Saturday during practice or walkthrough. So it's a bit different in New York, but fills a big need for them to where they can go out and field an offensive line if they had to play a game tomorrow. But it should not change their plans in the draft. Like you said, it does open them up to take someone like a Dunze if they don't like the tackles available to them. So maybe it gives you some cushion to where you don't have to reach if your primary tackles are gone. But outside of that, you should not look at tackle as having been resolved. And now you could just move down the list of needs and just focus elsewhere in the first round. You absolutely should not do that or trade away from a quality tackle because you have Tyron Smith. You should not do that. You're on mute, Chris. I'm also going to add here that Tyron Smith was the 4th highest graded tackle in the league last year. So yes, even at his age of 33, whatever it is now, this far into his career, while he's banged up and broken, he is still an elite left tackle. And that is not an exaggeration by any stretch.
I actually like the idea of the Jets moving back. They don't have a 2nd round pick this year, right? So moving back, you get some additional picks. We talked about how Tyler Guyton is a guy that's kind of built in that same physical mold as Tyron Smith is, you can get him at the end of the first round. And I don't hate that if it gives you maybe a second and third round pick in addition to what you're doing. So if the top guys are gone, I don't hate the idea of the Jets shooting back. But again, it just goes to this gives them so much more possibilities. So got to love that. The biggest news of the weekend, which was extremely sad, but Aaron Donald retires, right? This is the best defensive player in the past, I want to say 10 years. I don't know. Like people would probably argue JJ Watt was kind of similar.
Not even close. It's Donald.
I agree, but people would argue that it would be.
I will argue with them.
I mean, I grew up with Reggie White, so I'm not going to do the all-time thing because, like, for me, it's Reggie White, right? But Aaron Donald was special. We tweeted this weekend that Aaron Donald's salary influenced our weighted system. If you play all 22, you know the way we grade players, right, is or score players, excuse me, is their PFF grade times a positional weight. Defensive interior moved up 2 additional spots because of Aaron Donald's contract. Typically, I mean, we're in free agency. When you see these players get signed, the best players typically beat the last guy by a few $1 million, right? Or at most, it's, a quarterback gets an additional $10 million over the last deal. It's never as significant as what Aaron Donald was to the rest of the defensive interior position. It was absurd, right? They paid Aaron Donald like he was the best edge rusher in the NFL, the best offensive tackle in the NFL, the best receiver in the NFL. He was in that tier where every other defensive lineman was significantly less. And it sucks for all of you that, and me included, that invest heavily in defensive interior, because the weight of the defensive interior position, losing Aaron Donald, is going to go down because of this, even with all the other big contracts that are happening. That is the impact, at least from a salary perspective, that Aaron Donald had. But his impact on the game was so much more than that, right? Like, how many times did you see a draft prospect like an Ed Oliver pop up and everybody's like, he's fast. He might be undersized, but maybe he's Aaron Donald, right? It's like, there's one Aaron Donald. We found that out, right? There's one guy that's Aaron Donald, truly special player, once in a lifetime player. So again, just congratulations to him.
Yeah. To me, the best defensive player this century. I think you have to go back to the 90s, whether you want to go Reggie White, you want to go Deion Sanders at that point and start looking at names like that. But in the 21st century, as far as I'm concerned, he's the best defensive player we've seen in the NFL.
Agreed. All right, Ray, the meat and potatoes of today's episode is starting to review wide receivers. And I say starting because this is actually going to be a 3-part series just because of how good this wide receiver group is. We don't have a choice. We have to do it. Like, this would be a 3-hour-long episode if we just did all of them at once. And sorry, I can't do that right now. So we're gonna break this down. I think I'm going first, and the first prospect we're going to be talking about is Jermaine Burton from Alabama. Jermaine Burton is a 22-year-old receiver, 6 feet tall, 194 pounds. He's played about 1,700 snaps, 84.9 receiving grade, and in his career at Alabama, 116 receptions, 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns. And he's obviously not the biggest receiver in the world, 6 feet, 194 pounds, but he's not incredibly small either. He kind of wears his weight well. And he's more of a speed, quick possession type receiver that a lot of teams need. Not a lot of teams, every team needs, right? Every team wants a receiver like Burton in their room. And when I reviewed him, kind of the speed, it's not incredible. He's not extremely fast. He's fast. He's not extremely fast, but his agility is above average. He has this quickness. He has this separation skills that really separate him from the rest of the group, in my opinion, that we're going to be talking about today. But let's go through, just watch a couple of his plays. We could talk through some of that. And I will say, watching him play was so frustrating because of the quarterback play at Alabama was just so subpar. This guy is like literally always open. And I'm playing clips against Texas, which is a really tough defense, but he was always open. And he, what's his name? Milroe?
Jalen Milroe. Yeah.
He's just
fullback.
He just couldn't.
It's my favorite line. Fullback's playing quarterback. My favorite line.
But I wanted to show this clip because, again, this is a great defensive group and he finds space really well. So he is the guy that's going to get to the back of the end zone at the bottom of your screen here, gets to the back of the end zone and just sits and finds space, and he's wide open. And the quarterback finds him finally and tries to throw him the ball, and it's an awful throw. But again, he's just that possession receiver that's going to get his hands on the football. He's going to make the play that you need him to make. He's going to be your reliable guy, right? He is open for 5 seconds here, which is insane in football terms, right? That's an eternity. And just a horrible thrown ball, but makes a play, right? That's the kind of guy you're getting. He's at the top of your screen here. You could go ahead and hit play. So again, just so frustrating because he is open in this play for 6-7 seconds before the quarterback even sees him. And he, again, just does the right thing. He gets into this zone and he sits and he's patient and he's patient. The quarterback throws the ball when the safety decides to see that Burton's coming underneath, and he throws the ball to him late. And Burton shows why he's this sure-handed receiver, but also that he has the ability. He is strong enough to make a contested catch when you need him to. So I've really liked that rep. Ray, it is coming in a little blurry here, buddy, but we're gonna rock with it.
It's always the first one. It's always the first one, and I don't understand it.
But here's the view, right, from the all-22 angle, and he just sits. He makes the contested catch. It is blurry as hell. But look at that. They're basically one person at this point, him and the safety, and he just makes a great catch. So those are the 2 plays I really wanted to show. There is a third play here, but for some reason, I don't know if it's going to show. And it's just the fact that he just absolutely torches the DB and throws his hands up because he wanted the ball. But the edge kind of got in the way of the quarterback. So I'll give the quarterback a break on this one. And the quarterback does what he can do to get the ball to the running back just to get a little gain. But it was all game. He was wide open and just the quarterback just couldn't get him the ball. But from my point of view, this is a really good player. In my mind, he resembles a lot of the good qualities we see in a Christian Kirk. Like, that's the kind of receiver he is. And to me, that's a receiver that goes early, mid, second round. I don't think, because of how good this receiver class, this is a receiver that could touch first round. I don't think so. But it's a receiver that's definitely good enough to go early second. I see him more as a mid-second kind of player. But again, this is a receiver that every team's going to need one of, so he could go earlier.
Yeah, I like Jermaine Burton, and he has the pedigree, if I recall. I mean, he's at Alabama, so probably very highly regarded prospect heading into college. The size metrics, for the most part, all hit, right? He's over 6 feet tall, almost 200 pounds, 196, give or take. He's got a good 40, good 10-yard split, 30.5-inch vertical, and I mean, just a phenomenal broad jump. I can't do the math right now because it's just showing me the total inches. 133 inches. What is that? Anyway, so I think by and large, you see the athletic pedigree with someone like Burton, and then you wonder, okay, well, was the production down because of the quarterback situation at Alabama and the style that they were the style of offense that they were basically forced to play? It could be the case. I mean, even earlier on in his career, wide receiver was a bit of a black hole for Alabama, and he never really stepped up to kind of take that mantle of Alabama receivers past, which is a bit of a worry, but he was young. So this could be someone, I think, that has some upside and some untapped potential there, because I think, again, the athletic traits are all there and you see it on tape. And he's got some strong hands. We're going to go through a few clips here elsewhere where you don't see strong hands from some of these highly regarded receivers. It's a trait that a lot of people take for granted, but it's important, and not everyone has it. He does. So is it the nuance that's needed? Is it just a situation that's a bit more receiver friendly that maybe he needs to step into that he didn't have in college? I'm not sure exactly which, but those are all different factors that can contribute to him eventually being a better pro player than he was in college. And so that's intriguing to me in a class where we're talking about a ton of other wide receivers who are getting a ton of publicity and all the limelight, which rightfully so, as we'll get into. But someone like Burton can be a real big sleeper in this class. And I do like him a lot. I like what I see. There's just not enough of it there. And it might just be because of the situation overall.
What did you think of my early to mid second round range for him?
I think that's probably about right. I mean, we're going to see a lot of receivers go in the top 60, 65 picks, and he should be right there. I think on a big board, he'll be around there. How it all shakes out based on need and such, and when the run on receivers takes place. after the initial tier of guys, you have the big three in the top half of the first and such. Once that's gone, when does the run on receiver begin? Is it the early second round? Is it the mid to late second round? Whenever that takes place, that's where I think he can ultimately end up in the draft. I see a top 60 player, maybe because of the depth in the class and just the way the needs shake out. He might end up in the early third, but I think his rightful place is around, mid second round, pick 50-ish, 55, give or take, somewhere around there.
Okay. All right. So we're in agreement there. The next guy we're talking about is Jalen Polk, right? So Jalen Polk, I'll just do it for you. The overview. Washington receiver. He was the number 2 receiver there. He's 22 years old, 6'2", 204 pounds. Played about 1,600 snaps with a 76.1 receiver grade. 126 receptions, 1,969 yards, and 17 total touchdowns. Okay, handing it off to you.
Yeah, so I'll start with just saying that for Jalen Polk, before I pull up the film here, right? Even those numbers you mentioned, I mean, receiver-friendly offense, Pac-12, you had Penix slinging it all over the place. So kind of paints the picture there, right? And then when you dig into the film, he's pretty much a narrative buster in the positive and negative sense as it relates to at least my point of view and from what you see just on tape. A lot of what you expected going in was kind of the opposite. Again, both good and bad. So here, finally pulling it up so we can dive right in. I'm going to go ahead and share. I'm going to share the different file now. See if it works a bit better for you. And if maybe we can get a bit of a clearer picture here. So in any event, so Jalen Polk, I'm going to start off with a couple blocking plays, right? But so much fun. But here at the bottom of your screen, he's a physical cat. The ball is actually complete other side of the field here. And he's just going to go ahead and he's not looking at the ball. He's not seeing where anything is. He's just engaged with the defender, giving him a little shove. And then, okay, fine, play's over. You always see receivers just kind of, lay a little hand on the chest, kind of look. It's kind of like the unspoken, like, all right, yeah, this isn't our play, yada, yada, right? Let's look like we're doing something. He gets after it time and time again. Bottom of your screen, again, another run play. You're going to see engage the defender. He's not looking back at the ball to see when the play is going to end. He's just engaging, and that's all he's doing, and that's all he's worried about. He's worried about, again, just driving the defender to the sideline and kind of making a statement, which I like to see, and that matters in all 22. You never see his head look back to the ball to see where the ball carrier is. He's just engaged, and he's enjoying it. So, again, you like it. And then here, a little crackback to the safety, out of control, ends up on the ground here. But you do see, again, just the willingness to throw his body around. You don't normally associate that with Pac-12 wide receiver play, right? So just 3 blocking plays there. Then we're going to get into a couple just that really sort of show me the concerns that I have with Jalen Polk. There's going to be another receiver that we talk about today that is the polar opposite of basically the next 2 plays that we're going to see. What I don't like is that he drifts as a route runner. He's not necessarily sharp or sudden. I was expecting to be more impressed. Here you have a DB, top of your screen, playing outside leverage. You're at the goal line. He's going to run an out to the front pylon, and there's no suddenness there at all. He just kind of drifts into the leverage, doesn't really threaten him at all with anything to his inside, and just kind of, drifts. Okay, he's not open. Ball has to go elsewhere. Incomplete. There's no violence to this route whatsoever. At no point is the defender worried about if he's going to go inside. He doesn't give him any cheese, nothing, just kind of drifts. And as he drifts outside, the DB just drifts outside with him. And you see this quite a bit on tape. He does not threaten the leverage of the defender, which you have to do in the NFL, regardless of how big, fast, or strong you are. And then I'm just going to show one crosser here. He's at the top of your screen. He's going to go across the field here. He is open for a second. The ball is laid in a bit behind him, but I want strong hands. That ball should have been caught. It's a little bit behind him, but you got to make that catch through contact right here. I mean, you got to catch that pass. It hits you in the hands, and you just couldn't hold on through contact. And again, this is something I saw multiple times on film, to where I was wondering, where's the physicality that I see when he's blocking? I mean, you're more physical when the ball is not coming your way than when it is. And it's a bit of an enigma. And I just kind of saw this a lot on tape. When we get into some other receivers, you're going to see the difference to not just the ability to get open, but how you get open and the violence with which they play when it comes to running routes and the nuance that's associated with it. It wasn't really there for Jalen Polk. I was unpleasantly surprised.
I love how you showed us all highlights and didn't give us one catch. That's hilarious. But
there were many in the national championship game. He ran like one comeback against like Prevent. It was bad. It was a bad showing.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you said. I think about him in a very similar light. I see him as more of this kind of like bendy, like wants to just use his body to make the like athletic cuts. But like you said, like maybe he's not elite at that even, right? I actually had him as like a 4th round pick. I have him much lower on my kind of my rankings because of that. Like the guy he reminds me of a lot of, I don't know if you remember this guy, but Alan Hearns from Jacksonville, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago at this point. I don't even know. But he was this guy that had a similar kind of build where he's not small, but he's not tough. And he doesn't really use his size, to make these difficult catches. And he kind of wants to use that bend. He wants to be this athlete, but maybe he's relying on that athleticism a little too much. And he doesn't really have this extreme explosiveness to his game either, right? Where he's going to just toast people all the time. I didn't really see that from him either. I have him as like an average route runner too. So it's not like he has this great route running ability that you'd want. So again, just for me, probably a 4th round pick. I don't know if that's kind of close to what you were thinking.
So I'm not quite there as far as building my board. Where I'm at the stage now where it's like, okay, here are my surefire day 2 guys, and he's not a surefire day 2 guy. So he looks like a day 3 guy to me. Where that ends up, I'm not exactly sure just yet. I gotta get there. But yeah, I don't see the traits where I go, okay, yeah, the 3rd round, or if I'm in an all 22 rookie draft, even in the late, 5th-ish round, right, 50 picks in, I'm not seeing anything that makes me draft him over a lot of these other names in the class. I just don't see it. He's got production because he's in an offense that's pretty receiver friendly, but when it comes to the tough catches or the tough situations, it wasn't there. There's another play that was in this same game where, again, kind of ducking down against the YouTube intelligence agencies here. But there was another play where it was 2nd and 10. I think they're down 7, and he runs a slot fade, and he just drifts. You see him look back to the ball before he gets on the toes of the DB, and he kind of slows down his route and then speeds up again when he realizes the ball's in the air. And it's like, you're down 7 in the national championship game. Where is the go get it? I don't understand how I can't put together his physicality in the run game and the lack of physicality and go get it in the passing game for a receiver. It's pretty odd to me. It's not something I see very often. So I'm not sure what to do with him. It's like you said, size is kind of there. Athleticism is kind of there, but he's above baseline, but when you're in the NFL, you need more than that. And the rest of the game just has not really come together. So it's a day 3 type of prospect for me, and not one I'm necessarily targeting any earlier than that.
And so we've been giving you kind of draft round. We've been giving you some comps. The reason we're not giving you all 22 arrow rankings is because these receivers, at least for my mind, are not in that world, right? This is a step below those guys. Those are really like the elite prospects that we see. There's going to be guys, that we talk about later this week that will absolutely fall into that world. We'll talk about those things. But I guess receiver, one of the other things is receiver is really difficult to say, tell me the landing spot. Just because, like I was talking about with Burton, he can go anywhere. Every single team in the NFL needs that receiver, right? So like to say, what's your landing spot for him? It's kind of nonsense, right? Just because, again, like he could go anywhere and he would help any team. I think, Polk, along those lines, like any team can value those things and draft him. I don't think it's like, there's AJ Brown and Devonta Smith on the Eagles. Let them add Polk and that'll add this, to their game. It's like, no, like some team might want every team would want 3 AJ Browns, right? That doesn't matter, right? Like it's the type of receiver. So I don't know, Ray, if you want to talk about landing spots, but like for me, I just don't think that makes sense for this kind of an exercise.
No, once you get that deep, it's not really worth that time. I would say, I mean, he can go run block for Jim Harbaugh. They just lost Mike Williams, right? And then Keenan Allen, maybe he can go there, and they're just going to run the ball all day anyway. So maybe the negatives there on tape don't even matter. But yeah, I think for landing spot or anything, that's maybe for the totality of the wide receiver episode when we bring this whole class together. And that's really more so, again, for the top guys, to where the difference makers can actually make a difference, or the potential difference makers can go somewhere where the situation allows them to make a difference. So if that made any sense, but for this round, I think it's fine not to.
Okay. Next guy, Xavier Legette, South Carolina receiver, more of your big body guy, but he does have speed, so I don't want to take that away from him. Probably the ideal build, right? Like when you talk about the ideal build receivers, it's AJ Brown, it's DK Metcalf. Those are the guys that, you see and they intimidate you on the field at the receiver position. Xavier Legette has that to him. He is a brick, right? 23 years old though, so definitely an older prospect, 6'1", 223 pounds. He's played 1,500 snaps, 86.9 receiver grade this last season, has 105 total receptions, 1,593 yards, 10 total touchdowns. So when we talk about a guy like this, right, 23 years old, and he only has 1,593 career yards, it's kind of like you kind of scratch your head and go, something's not right there. Like, why are we talking about this guy as a top prospect in this draft if he only has 1,500 yards and he's 23 years old? There are a few reasons for Legette, but the biggest one to me is he played quarterback in high school. He wasn't a receiver. I think he used the early years of his career to kind of learn the position. And we didn't really see him develop into what he could be and what we're talking about as him today until this year, right? Like there was a lot missing from his game previously, which is why, there's that he's only starting to get, put into this conversation. But he is a guy that I like a lot of things to his game. He has, again, I said, like the AJ Brown, DK Metcalf build, even a little bit like Deebo Samuel build to him, the way he plays football. So a couple of the plays I'm going to show you are things that resemble some of those players, right? The AJ Browns, the Deebo Samuel, where I think he's probably a nice kind of mixture of the two. But from my perspective, I think he leans more the way he plays receiver to a Deebo, which really works well when you're on the 49ers, but we've seen a lot of other teams try to replicate and not have that success. So I think he has a lot of potential. I'm excited about him, but I just don't know. So yeah, this first play is on the bottom of the screen. Lacks separation skills, right? But can make big plays. This is him running a deep post, and he puts his foot in the ground and makes that post cut, and he tries to make it skinny, but he doesn't really sell it in a way that, I don't know what's happening over there, Ray. You're going to give me a stroke.
I'm trying to rewind, man. It's not cooperating with me.
So yeah, stay here for a second. So he makes that cut, and oh boy, he makes that cut, and he just doesn't sell it well, right? He doesn't have that nuance to his game like a Burton does. He's way bigger than Burton, so it's difficult for us to expect that. But he does make the cut. He gets just enough separation where Spencer Rattler trusts him, throws the ball up, trusts him to make the play, and that's exactly what he does. He makes an incredible catch here, deep down the field, right? Goes up, makes a great catch. They're on the 5-yard line, 6-yard line. I like this angle because you get to see it a little bit closer up, but Rattler just throws an absolute space ball and probably needed to throw it more to the other side of the field to keep the DB off of him, but kind of throws it to the middle of the field, which makes it that contested catch, but he makes a great catch. Okay, this play, Legette is going to come across the field, and this I saw a little bit better nuance to his route running, where he does get that separation. He faked a couple players, finds an opening in the zone, makes a nice catch, finds the sideline, and heads upfield. This is the Deebo Samuel kind of play that we talk about, where it's really the yak, right? Get him the ball, he's open, let him run in space. And this is a guy that can run in space, right? And he's built like a freaking running back, so you can do that. But this is even more Deebo, right? They do a lot of this too, where it's, let's just get our athlete the ball, right? So this is just puts him in motion, hands the ball off, get him in space, right? And that's what they do here. Gives him the ball, he finds it, he knows how to run through a lane, follows his blocker, gets a nice gain here. Didn't do anything incredible, but they do that a lot, right? Because that's the kind of athlete Legette is. For me, it's how do you get him the ball so that he can be in open space to create with his legs? But I think you're going to struggle to get him to be the route running separator that we really covet more in today's NFL, right? And that's why I think AJ Brown is more that side of the spectrum, and Debo being the other side. So he probably falls way further on the Debo side. But I do like this guy as a receiver. I think he's better than who was the guy the Panthers drafted a few years ago?
Oh yeah, big guy who's not doing anything.
Good. Appreciate you. Way to
He
back
has
me up
like
here,
a
buddy.
low light. I'm trying. You put me on the spot. I know.
I'm always going to put you on the spot. But those are the guys, right? That all the NFL keeps trying to find these guys, and they just keep missing. I think he's better
Jonathan
than
Mingo.
Yeah, that's not who I was thinking of. But okay, Jonathan Mingo.
Okay.
Jonathan Mingo was last.
How far back are you going?
Laviska Shenault. That's who I was thinking of. Laviska Shenault, right?
Laviska Shenault. Yes,
of
course.
I don't even know if the Panthers drafted him, but Laviska Shenault, right?
I think he went to Jacksonville at first.
Got it. Right. So anyway, the NFL keeps trying to draft these kind of receivers, these Laviska Shenault types of receivers to make the next Debo Samuel. Legette is better than Shenault was, much better in my mind. So he's, to me, mid to late second round pick. I think because he lacks the route running, I would very much hesitate to pick him earlier than that. But I think he's very good. He's a good enough athlete where I would take the risk end of the second round, especially if you want a guy that you can try to make into an X.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like because the lack of separation is what scares me based on how today's game is played. So he has to. I just talked about how landing spot doesn't matter for guys in this tier. It matters for him because he needs to go somewhere creative because, like you said, he is more of the, hey, ball in my hands and then make something happen, or trust me to go and get it, because he's not going to make himself available in all certain situations because he doesn't have that quick separation skill that others do, to where they are quarterback friendly. They're going to get peppered with a lot of targets because of it. That's not him. And so it's a little unsettling to try to project out his future prospects unless he goes to the right situation that, again, is comfortable with a lot of those smoke screens and yak opportunities for receivers like him, that profile like him, because it's not necessarily just, okay, I'm big and burly and strong and I just need build up speed. It's even when the speed builds up, the separation does not. That's not his game. And that's what's a bit scary to me. So completely just disregarding everything I said previously, I think this is a landing spot dependent type of player because you're going to have to get creative to use him properly.
So he needs to go to a Kyle Shanahan offense. Is that what I'm hearing?
Basically needs to go to a Kyle Shanahan offense. I mean, he's not the only one. McVay. I mean, even like you see other receivers, other coaches and schemes too. Like, I mean, there's the whole Texas coach stuff in Dallas, right? But they don't mind getting running a screen for a receiver and just kind of getting him the ball and seeing what he could do in space. I mean, CeeDee Lamb took several handoffs this year in multiple games this season. I mean, this guy is built for that much more than CeeDee Lamb is, right? CeeDee Lamb is just a guy who can get yak. But if you have someone who's legitimately built like a running back with that yards after catch style, and you want to use him in that way, not to mention they don't even have like an actual running back on the roster right now anyway. So yes, I mean, the easy answer is a Shanahan tree coach or a McVay tree coach, but even a situation like in Dallas, for example, where they can get creative, or they have to get creative in the backfield to kind of get their weapons the ball in space. That's an opportunity for someone like Legette, because like I said, he's not the quick separator. That's just, you could drop him in any scheme and he's going to get himself open. That's not him.
And Jerry Jones will take him in the first round. So I like that. I like that a lot.
Gosh, he will not. Oh my gosh. Not if I have anything to say about it.
Next guy we're talking about is Ladd McConkey. And he is the elite athlete that he showed us at the combine that I wasn't sure he was. So that was really cool to see. He is 22 years old out of Georgia, 22 years old, 5'11", 187 pounds. He's played over 1,000 snaps, only has 98 receptions, 1,424 yards, 10 touchdowns. He was honestly the number 2 receiver behind Brock Bowers, right? So like there was another receiving weapon there, even if it wasn't at the receiver position. But Ray, you were going to talk to us about Lad, and there's a little traffic cone in the middle of your screen there, buddy.
Yeah, man, pulling it up. So he's the polar opposite. Don't mind my traffic cone. He's the polar opposite of who we just discussed, in my opinion, Jalen Polk, which means I like him a lot. And before I even show you the tape, just going to go ahead and talk about how this is not your, look at this, white slot receiver. This is Julian Edelman, quick guy. Maybe not the fastest, but he's quick and gets open on outs and ins and slants and yada, yada. That is absolutely, he does some of that stuff, but that's not the type of profile we're talking about here. This is not Andy Isabella. Okay. This is a legitimate receiver who may actually be better downfield than he is in the quick game. So I talked about what I didn't like with Jalen Polk early on, right? I love how Ladd McConkey attacks leverage of defenders here. And we're going to see it right away. His first target against Alabama. Again, we know how that secondary is heralded, right? And so you see at the top of the screen, the receiver has clear outside leverage here. He's going to run a comeback. He's not going to drift to the midline of the defender to try to position himself to be head up and then break outside. He's going to say, fine, you have outside leverage. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to threaten vertical. I'm going to make you respect the possibility of me going deep to the inside. And then when you do turn those hips, I'm going to snap down and then win on the outside. And boom, first down, pitch and catch. So look at the alignment at the start of this play. How far outside leverage the defender had here and how McConkey wins anyway. This is something that you did not see from someone like Jalen Polk, right? So this is not just a short, fast slot white guy just going ahead and winning with quickness. That's actual nuance and downfield threatening that allows him to then snap back and make himself presentable to his quarterback. So that's prototype outside stuff right there. Second, what we're going to see here on the bottom of your screen is against zone. Reminds me a lot of Jackson Smith and Jigba. And actually, one of the plays that got played a lot from Jackson Smith and Jigba's college tape was a play similar to this, where he's just going to go ahead, run across the field, find the zone, or find the hole in the zone, recognize a scramble drill taking place. His quarterback is rolling right, and then he's going to make himself presentable and work back to the football. So again, he came from all the way across the field at the bottom of your screen, ran a deep over route, and then came back to the football to make himself presentable for his quarterback. I think it did end up being incomplete. The pass was just a bit short. But again, the actual style and just the recognition you see at the top of his route, boom, zone. Oh, okay, scramble drill. I'm going to go ahead, work right, and then work back. That's exactly how they teach it. That's textbook stuff from McConkey. So all the little things, the nuances, he is very quarterback friendly. And then again here, I'm just going to show this one play, just showing you the explosiveness that he has out of his break here. Just snaps down, gets the defender flat-footed, and he's open right here, just bursts out of that cut on the post. Quarters coverage, a bit of a tight window anyway. Throw goes elsewhere. But you see the explosiveness out of the break downfield to work himself open deep. This is a 3-level threat at wide receiver. This is not a one-trick pony. This is not someone that's limited to just the slot. He's a complete receiver. And I think a lot of people early on thought some of the first-round talk was premature with Ladd McConkey. I could absolutely see why someone would draft him towards the latter half of the first round. If this guy goes to Kansas City, I don't understand how I talk about how we shouldn't talk about landing spots, and now I'm just talking about landing spots with every player that I discussed. But if he ends up in Kansas City, that's dangerous, because this is a guy who wins multiple different ways. He has the speed metrics. The size is fine. It's not great, but it's not at all what I would call, undersized to where it limits where he can play in the league. And again, he can win in so many different ways that You see that type of recognition and that type of nuance in scramble drills and extended plays with someone like Pat Mahomes. I mean, that's absolutely deadly. So this is a really good wide receiver, a complete player, not limited at all by his size or profile. I'm a big fan of Ladd McConkey.
When I was scripting this episode, I specifically wanted you to take Ladd because when I watched his film before I saw the results of the combine, I was not concerned or anything like that. Like I maybe misunderstood him to be more of like a Hunter Renfrow, where I was like, this is a really, really good route running, smaller, speedy kind of guy. That's his whole thing is built on technique, right? Like he's just a technique freak who is going to run routes, get open, be, a guy for your quarterback to rely on kind of a thing. And one of the biggest concerns I had was the production, right? He's 22 years old. He only has 1,400 yards to his name, right? So like, why is that? I still don't really know. I'm curious if you have an answer. I don't know. But after the combine, I didn't have a chance to go back and just like rewatch his film, but he's Garrett Wilson explosive, right? Like he's as explosive as the top receivers that we talk about. So it definitely does change the conversation where before I'm saying it's Hunter Renfrow, he's going to be a late third, early fourth round pick. It's like, okay, but he moves like Garrett Wilson in reality. He's fast as Garrett Wilson. How does that change the conversation, right? So I still think from my perspective, first round talk is too high for him. I think it's the same kind of range as a Burton where I'm saying this is a undersized, really good route runner, explosive. That's going to go early to mid second round. But do you have an answer for the production? Like, why wasn't it there?
I have nothing else other than just kind of the style of offense they played, right? It was downhill, some play action featuring someone like Brock Bowers, who is phenomenal. Again, don't have anything beside that other than it was kind of like not to the same extent, but essentially kind of like Michigan-esque to where their receivers go to the Senior Bowl of Roman Wilson and you go, holy hell, like, look, this guy's actually really good. Where the hell was this? And then you look and they're literally handing the ball off 38 times in a row in key games and not letting their quarterback throw the ball on third down. Georgia didn't do it to that extent by any stretch, but stylistically, they weren't exactly slinging it around. I mean, if Ladd McConkey was in a Washington offense, I think he clears someone like Polk's production easily. So it could just be coming down to just the style of play of just their overall offense. I don't have anything else outside of that because I saw him. There's another play here where he gets open downfield against Kentucky where I'm like, whoa, again, YouTube intelligence agency, so couldn't play here, but he gets open deep and it's just a matter of the play just wasn't there. But there were more opportunities than what the production shows for someone like McConkey this past season, to where I think the numbers could have been much bigger or much better.
Because when I look at the receivers, right, Keon Coleman, Adonai Mitchell, and Xavier Legette, like those are the receivers with similar production to McConkey. And all of those receivers, the conversation going on is that they are total gambles because they just didn't do it enough, right? They didn't do it enough in college, but nobody's saying that about McConkey. And that's the only thing that concerns me is like, why not? Why is nobody having that conversation?
I think it's because they still think he's a slot receiver. I think they still think he's like Julian Edelman. He's not.
No,
I think they haven't caught up. I think they have not caught up.
People are talking about him to the first round, right? Like I hear that pretty often. And I'm like, okay, you're saying he's a first rounder, but Legette, Coleman, and Adonai Mitchell are most likely not. So I'm like just sitting here going like, I don't understand. But we'll see, right? Like I don't know who's right or
those
who's
names
wrong.
Though, right? So yeah,
absolutely will.
We'll tell the people. We will tell the people why that's the case.
Well, I'm telling you that from my perspective, I wouldn't take him before the early to mid second round.
It's a top 40 player for me. You don't want him to. You might not take him, but if he ends up on the Chiefs, you don't want him going to the Chiefs. So there's that.
But that's anybody.
It's one of those.
That's anybody.
No,
like,
I don't know if that's anybody.
We had a conversation weeks ago where you were like,
Marquise Brown go anywhere.
You were like, Marquise Brown is done. I wouldn't franchise tag him. I wouldn't keep him. And all of a sudden the Chiefs get him. It's like, okay, he's a top 20 fantasy wide receiver now.
You said that. Please. Yeah, he'll get open and it's just more drops for the Chiefs. I'm not concerned about how I really enjoyed that Joe's Pizza because Amari Cooper just absolutely slayed Hollywood Brown's production this past season. So
because I didn't have the injury tag in the conversation, I purposely took it out.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like, who's going to get?
I don't think it would have mattered.
More.
Something tells me it would not have mattered.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see this year. All right. Next up, we have Ricky Pearsall, the receiver out of Florida. He is another one of these slightly undersized, very good route running receivers, but he's more than that to me. He's very interesting. 23 years old, 6 feet tall, 193 pounds, played 2,100 snaps, 77.8 receiving grade this past year, has 151 receptions for 2,277 yards and 14 total touchdowns. Again, really interesting receiver to me because he plays so much bigger than his size, even though he is this shifty, route running, nuanced receiver. He has a lot of interesting things to his game. But the biggest thing that people want to see is really this first play. If you haven't seen it yet, I figured I had to get it in here because it's just pretty freaking awesome. But this is him going up with one hand and catching the ball, getting absolutely destroyed by the corner and the safety, and holds onto the football, right? So contested catch, yes. Was wide open for a couple seconds, yes. Just makes an absolutely absurd OBJ-style catch. This guy can do that. And in case you thought this was a one-off kind of thing, play the next play because he does it basically again. And that's him there at the top of the tree, goes up, makes an absolute great catch while getting hit, right, with the safety coming down hard on him, and just makes a great catch. He gets open. He can do all those things, but he can also just make absolutely great plays all over the football field. This option, or play that angle again, because it's really great to see him go back to an underthrown ball behind him, use his body to contort, go backwards, catch it behind the corner, and just make a great play with the safety about to crush him, right? That's incredible. Like, this is special talent. And if you're worried this is a contested catch guy, he doesn't separate, that's not at all the case with Pearsall. He does separate. He does it. I'm just showing you these couple plays to show some of the other highlights. This is an interesting one that he doesn't get the ball. I only played one game. I only got cuts from one game, but he doesn't get the ball here. But just showing him absolutely toasting the DB. The DB's sprinting after him at the end of that play. This is a special receiver, right? And I don't think it's just, again, it's not just the contested catch stuff. It's not just he's a good route runner. He really is this all-around receiver that was used as a weapon. He, similar to like Xavier Legette, they used him in interesting ways where they would have him constantly in motion because he was the vocal point, right? Like, DBs followed him. Defenses changed what they were doing when he did that, right? So they constantly had him in motion, moving him across the field. But he has speed. He's a legit separator, and he's probably the most fun athlete I saw in this draft. I loved watching him play, but he is 23 years old, so it does limit kind of how high I think of him. His route tree right now is not elite, right? He does a lot of deep posts. He does a lot of crosses. Again, they move him in the backfield a lot, so they are trying to create for him. And he does rely slightly too heavily on making the big spectacular catch, but I do think that's part of the Gators offense. And just being an older prospect, I think those are kind of my knocks. But a guy I really like, I'm really excited about. He's a player that I will absolutely follow his entire career. Every week, I'll probably check in to see what he did because he's exciting to me. And yes, people are saying that the comp is Julian Edelman for this guy, and it totally makes sense, not because of the route running ability or things like that, but because Julian Edelman, when the moment was big, he showed up and made the biggest plays. Pearsall is that guy.
Yeah, Florida wasn't good, and he was. And basically, that's all it comes down to. So they had to try to get the ball to him and in his hands any way they possibly could. He profiles as a strong number two, not necessarily. I mean, possession is putting it in too much of a box, I would say, but a possession type of receiver. He's not a game-breaking, dynamic player that's going to ascend to like the top option, a number one receiver in the league, but a very dependable, reliable number two, where I think when he does have a counterpart on the other side of the field that is that guy, that alpha in the room, I think that's where he can really shine and benefit a team because he does a lot of little things well. He's just not necessarily a game-breaking athlete at the next level, but can run some good routes for you, make tough catches for you, keep the chains moving, kind of has that veteran mindset that, everybody wants in their locker room. The floor is very high with this player, I think is essentially what I'm trying to say. Is he's a high floor player that can be dependable for you for a number of years. So you're getting a good player. You might not be getting a game breaker, but you know what you're going to get with someone like Ricky Pearsall, and every single team can use him. So again, another one of those sort of landing spot agnostic guys, as long as you know what you're getting, which is you're not getting a prototype number one type of receiver, but anything else you need, he can do for you.
Yeah, and before the combine, he's another guy I had later in the draft. I had him as a 4th round guy because of the age, because he isn't as good of a route runner as some of the guys that I had earlier talked about. And yeah, like he does rely slightly too heavily on the contested catch, but seeing him also, like a Lad McConkey, just break the combine, now I start to think, I'm like, is he going to go maybe late 2nd round, early 3rd round? Is he that good? I think probably. I think the answer is probably yes. I see him as an early 3rd round guy.
Yeah, I've always had him in the 3rd. I've always had him kind of in that early 3rd range. Combine didn't change too much for me just because I know what I'm going to get, and I don't want that to influence me, especially at a position like this in a class that's as deep as this. Mm-hmm. Just trust the tape with someone like Ricky Pearsall, and no, again, you're not getting game breaker regardless of what the testing says, but you're getting everything else, which is very good. So early 3rd round is great. If you're an NFL team and you pick this guy up in the 3rd round, you should be ecstatic. I like kind of how he profiles, in all honesty, in all 22 too. I think as a later round pick, 5th, 6th, 7th, I think he's going to grade out a lot better than a lot of guys who may be a bit more dynamic, maybe a bit more exciting than him in this class. But in that cluster of mid to late day 2 receivers, I think he can grade the best and be that type of 3rd or 4th receiver for an all 22 roster throughout his career, because of all the little things that he does well and how dependable of a player he actually is. The bottom's not going to fall out of his grading for you.
Right. So he's going to go to the Patriots, right? Because he's Julian Edelman, little white receiver.
Yeah, totally. That's
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. So we did tier 3 receivers. This is the back end of the receiver group that we think are top receivers in this draft. Again, this is the deepest thing ever. We're going to come back a couple times this week, hopefully, to do the next 2 tiers, the middle tier and the top tier. So just tune in later. We'll discuss those. But again, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at all22_PFF, and give us a review wherever you watch and listen to your podcast. And have a great day.
Go.